In Western Europe, there is a point of connection, a bridge built of mountains laid bare, immense open plains, Nordic woodlands, and Mediterranean forests. This is a place with an incredible wealth of living creatures, of unique species. A peninsula with a brusque silhouette that lies between the heat of Africa and more temperate Europe. A place of change and of exchange. It is a point of connection between continents, where the footprints and lives of man and beast intermingle, along with history and nature. Between the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea, we find the edge of the old continent. In its most deserted extremes, in wide open regions, there are barely 9 inhabitants per square kilometer, one of the lowest levels of population density in the European Union. But really, what is Iberia? Is it the beginning of Europe or its furthest boundary? The isolated, different cul-de-sac, or a bridge, a point of connection and communication? The Iberian Peninsula is both. A doorway between north and south, and a wide geographic bridge. But it is also a territory which is set apart and far afield. Atop Iberia's rugged surface, nature takes refuge. Those elements of nature that were expelled or overexploited by man and climate change, by human history and various ice ages. Iberia is the wild edge of Europe, a tiny paradise where animals take refuge that have become extinct in all other parts of the continent, and where unique species live that have been born in isolation. The natural peculiarities of the area affect its flora and fauna. The remote mountains and valleys have created a singular world, populated by exclusive species that can be found in even the most hidden spots. As a point of connection between two worlds, this is a place for passing through, a place of exchange and connection. It is a territory shared by beings that have 60 million years ago. The pieces of the puzzle that would form Europe were coming together one by one. Only the Southwest remained. Slowly, the tectonic plates began to move once again, and Africa slid toward the north, pushing the Iberian plate as it went. This small plate was turned and plowed into the south of France. The result of this impact was the compression of rocks, which moved upward due to the enormous pressure caused by the collision. This process created the Pyrenees. That same collision of plates led to the appearance of the Alps and the Carpathian Mountains. The Pyrenees act as a natural border, a mountain range extending 415 kilometers, with altitudes that often exceed 3,000 meters. This is the great scar between the Iberian plate and the rest of the European continent. At its widest point, there are 150 kilometers of ridges and mountains. In many ways, it acts as a separation between two huge ecosystems, the Atlantic and the Mediterranean. It is a point of transition between the two worlds and a natural boundary for many plant and animal species. Spain is the second most mountainous country on the continent, behind only Switzerland. The average altitude is about 650 meters above sea level, and nearly 60% of the territory exceeds 600 meters. The Iberian Peninsula, together with southeastern France, make up a very special region. This is a jigsaw puzzle of ecosystems where Mediterranean areas intermingle with Nordic regions, and where plateaus, cultivated fields, forests, mountains, and rivers make up a singular heterogeneous world. Griffon vultures fly over all of these ecosystems. From up above, it's much easier to understand how, in relatively short distances, the rivers, forests, mountains, and flatlands can interact with each other. This concentration of landscapes makes it possible for plant and animal species to multiply. Just one look from their vantage point is enough to discover a world that is quite different from the cliffs they inhabit. At the foot of many of these cliffs are plains and cultivated fields. Its exceptional call can be heard from hundreds of meters away. In the springtime, the males make a flamboyant display of their neck bristles, doing everything possible to attract the attention of the females on the vast plains of the peninsula. At daybreak, they begin a taxing exercise in which they emit a call and stamp the ground. It helps to gather strength before continuing the courtship. These impressive dances are more and more difficult to witness. The little bustard is quickly disappearing due to the alteration of its habitat, which is the result of pesticides and new farming techniques. Its main mating grounds are located on the peninsula, where more than 50% of the world's little bustards are located. But the peninsula's landscapes and plant life have not remained unchanged. About 6.5 million years ago, the Strait of Gibraltar was blocked and a large part of the Mediterranean Sea dried up. The Iberian Peninsula and much of the European continent were populated by animals that migrated across the dry sea floor from Africa and Asia. Some of the flatlands looked strikingly similar to those we see today, but not their occupants. The way those ecosystems looked recalls modern-day Africa. On the vast flatlands, a scattering of trees grew, surrounded by grasses of striking proportions. That ecosystem was frequented by very diverse animals that left their fossil remains in various parts of the Iberian Peninsula. Today, we have a fairly accurate idea of what kinds of animals they were and how they evolved over time. The large mammals were especially varied. These amazingly wild lands were home to the closely related ancestors of the giraffe, the rhinoceros, and the wild boar. The first ruminants related to the giraffe, the antelope, and the deer were already present in Iberia 20 million years ago. Ancient Iberian and European fauna included Proboscidea, the ancestors of modern-day elephants. Today, there are only 3 species of elephant, 2 African and 1 Asian. But in the past, they were notably diverse, with 19 different families, some of which lived in Europe. Mastodons and their African ancestors ruled the ancient Iberian savanna, becoming the largest and most powerful animals of the day. Living alongside the elephants were great grazing herds that moved through the grassy plains in much the same way as the modern zebra, wildebeest, and buffalo. Fossils found in Europe from more than 1.5 million years ago indicate that the climate then was much different from the one we know today. The hippopotamus, another ancient Iberian animal, bathed in marshes and rivers. Hippopotamuses roamed through an area that was quite extensive, as most parts of Europe were warm and humid. Just 500,000 years ago, hippopotamuses of colossal dimensions lived in what is now England. It is believed that they were still living in southern Europe just 30,000 years ago. There were also great felines, like the saber-toothed cat. But not even the great predators of the savannah were safe from sickness and accidents, and they remain vulnerable today. The chilling ritual of carrion eaters, who crowd around a carcass and fight over every mouthful, has been practiced repeatedly on the peninsula for many millions of years. Vultures are the last link in the food chain. Predators and herbivores alike end up disappearing into their hooked beaks. Vultures have separated into different species that do not compete with one another. Some of these rip apart the carcass. Others select the harder, leathery pieces. And still others make do with the scraps. Among the carrion eaters, there are also some mammals. Millions of years ago, there were also hyenas in southern Europe, which were quite similar to the ones we know today. Hyenas are large carnivores that live all over Africa and Asia. Their jaws are tremendously strong. They may be stronger than any other land animal. Nonetheless, some of their Iberian ancestors were much more slight of build, closer to the size of a dog. Although they seem to have been carrion eaters, their small bodies made them more agile and capable of hunting rodents, rabbits, and other small animals. All of these animals, hyenas, hippos, elephants, and giraffes, gradually changed and became extinct until they all disappeared. Today, there are only small vestiges of the varied fauna that came here from Africa and Asia, like the Barbary macaque. It's unclear how they came to inhabit the peninsula. Fossils show that their closest ancestors inhabited much of the European continent until the arrival of the last ice ages, when the face of the northern hemisphere was radically changed. Some experts believe that this small European population is all that remains of those monkeys that inhabited Europe. In Gibraltar, there is still a small group that lives protected from harsh weather and human persecution. What is certain is that the first reports of these monkeys date to 1740, when English troops imported them for hunting purposes. In 1943, only 4 individuals remained, so it was decided that new monkeys would be imported from northern Africa. Abrupt changes in climate caused the extinction of many animals. Just 20,000 years ago, much of Europe was covered by an enormous layer of ice, hiding a large part of England, Germany, and Poland. In intervals of between approximately 40,000 and 100,000 years. In some parts of the northern hemisphere, these ice ages were so intense that the glaciers reached heights of as much as 2 kilometers. Winters were quite cold, and in nearly all the Iberian and European mountain ranges, every peak was covered in ice. Ice fields hid almost half of the European continent, slowly pushing plants and animals southward. There was no choice. Only in the south could they possibly survive. Staying in the north meant a certain death. In that almost polar climate, only the toughest species survived. And these were pushed by the glaciers from northern Europe to the mildest southern enclaves. Bison, equipped with their thick coats, were able to handle the harsh weather and calm their hunger by digging in the snow or chewing on tree bark. Reindeer and other types of deer acclimated quite well to the environmental changes brought on by glaciation, and they diversified quite successfully. Reindeer are well adapted to cold climates. Their coats make it possible for them to withstand temperatures of -30 degrees Celsius. And their hooves are quite wide, so that they can walk on top of the snowpack. Thanks to their mobility, they can cover great distances in search of food and favorable weather. When the last ice age ended, many types of deer became extinct. The result was that the Mediterranean area became a sort of Noah's Ark, a lifesaver for all those that had been expelled by the glaciers. The migratory movements imposed by the glaciations meant that the Iberian Peninsula took on a vital role as a refuge. Once again, it became the continent's cul-de-sac, where all those plants and animals capable of moving came in search of the warm temperatures of spring. It's quite possible that as the ice came and went between each ice age, European birds began to migrate between the northern part of the continent and Africa, using the peninsula as a bridge and as a stopover destination. The peninsula proved essential, providing food and sun during the frigid days of the Nordic winters, or a food-filled paradise during the blazing African summers. Those opportunistic trips were the beginning of the migratory journeys taken year after year throughout the entire European continent. Still, some plants and animals have never moved at all. Europe's furthest, most solitary peninsula, together with its islands, is a rough territory from which living beings have found it difficult to escape. They are tied to its tortuous geography and climate. They need constant heat. They are Mediterranean through and through. Plants and animals have flourished in a collection of unique beings found only along the unpredictable borders of the peninsula. The ocellated lizard is the biggest saurian in Europe. The largest males can measure up to 90 centimeters long. These powerful lizards are capable of hunting shrews, mice, and small birds, although their diet is basically made up of a wide range of insects and invertebrates. They are attracted to heat and have managed to extend their habitat from the peninsula to the south of France and into northern Italy. Just above its head, an azure-winged magpie is building its nest. Individuals from the same flock. All of the birds share the same ecosystem, like the storks that have moved into this large holm oak, a hospitable tree that is emblematic of the Mediterranean ecosystem. At times, it is also home to the Spanish imperial eagle, the most majestic and rare bird of prey in all of Europe. Ice ages, drought, the creation of mountains. Ancient Europe has gradually been transformed over millions of years by the power of nature. But in just a few millennia, the changes that have occurred in these landscapes have been much more radical than those in the rest of its long history. The warm, calm waters of the Mediterranean were crossed by ancient mariners who flourished on shore. And those civilizations that had left the most profound mark in history faded away. Greeks, Romans, Egyptians, Ottomans. Humans and their ability to transform spread throughout the Mediterranean. For thousands of years, soldiers, merchants, peasants, and shepherds slowly conquered and transformed each bit of land. In Europe alone, the smallest of the continents together with Australia, there are more than 500 million inhabitants. And that's not counting people in Northern Africa or Eastern Mediterranean countries. The main civilizations in the last 3,000 years have sprung up on the shores of this sea. And all of these have left their mark on the landscape in order to feed themselves, build empires and cities, work the land, and fish. There are virtually no areas left where man has not stood, where he has not hunted for food or sold his wares, where he has not exploited the environment in some way. Supplying the markets in cities and villages throughout history is the driving force that has caused the unceasing invasion of nature. Fields of grain, orchards, vineyards, olive trees, irrigation systems. In Europe alone, there are more than 162 million hectares of cultivated land. The most fertile lands, the plains, riverbanks, and even mountain pastures, have been turned into places where resources can be obtained for the human race. But that's not all. In Europe alone, there are 25 million pigs and 18 million cows, in addition to 6 million sheep and goats. Many of these animals are not kept in stables. Rather, they live and graze in semi-natural territories, like holm oak pastures or mountain prairies, affecting other wildlife there and their natural cycles. In some parts of the continent, the seasonal migration of livestock still takes place. High mountain meadows are used in the summer, and grazing fields on the plains are used in the winter. Each ecosystem is occupied alternately for part of the year by tens of thousands of livestock animals that interact with the animals that occupy the area naturally. Still, life resists. And agreements are even reached. Truces that allow the omnipotent human being to live side by side with various beasts. The ancient cities of northern Africa, including all those of the Maghreb, are destinations for many birds. Storks, messengers of peace and respected by all Mediterranean cultures, are well known around ruins and buildings where they have always occupied the rooftops and the topmost floors, enjoying the best views of the city and becoming just another community member in these cities and villages. Alpine swifts are the kings of their walls, towers, and battlements. They have even conquered ancient military fortresses. This also occurs in Iberia and in other Mediterranean spots. Ruins from the Roman Empire are now home to these common swifts. These rapidly flying birds have permanently abandoned their old homes on craggy cliffs. They now live in holes in facades and roofs, and in the cracks found in ancient European cities. Mediterranean nature is Europe's great natural jewel, but this is also the territory that is most seriously under attack by humans in the modern age. Some plants and animals have come to an agreement with human beings, but others have hardly survived the unrelenting persecution over the centuries. Many species have disappeared from much of Europe. Generally, the great predators have been hunted into total extinction. Such is the case with the wolf, lynx, bear, and large birds of prey. Still, in the wildest, most hidden parts of the Iberian Peninsula, they have managed to escape human aggression. In the isolated mountains of the Northwest, protected by dense oak groves and rugged peaks, many of these animals took refuge. Here, the largest group of wolves in Western Europe has survived. The wolf is a symbol of the rivalry between man and the great beast. It seems that these two groups are incompatible, that they are incapable of living in the same territory. But the wolf has shown that this exclusionary theory does not hold. In Iberia, it is capable of living in highly populated areas, feeding on small rodents, rabbits, and carrion eaters. Wolves represent a wild kingdom that only needs a bit of respect in order to make a strong comeback. Together with the wolves, there are vultures of various species, eagles, and the last original pack of brown bears in Western Europe. The great variety of animals on the Iberian Peninsula is a compendium of two worlds. The northern one extends from Siberia down into the south of France and the northern part of the peninsula in the high central mountain ranges. On its borders are the northernmost plantations of beech trees on the continent, as well as a full complement of creatures tied to this cool seasonal climate. The southern world, influenced by the Mediterranean and by Africa, stretches throughout the peninsula, occupying each mild spot, sticking to the coasts and mountains, and causing an explosion of life that exists nowhere else on this planet. The reason for such diversity, for such wealth, is its location.